Power behind the shogun. Japan's hidden politics you were never taught. For most of the world, Japanese history is a story of samurai, shoguns, and heroic battles. A simple narrative, a clean chain of command, a world where the shogun ruled, and everyone else obeyed. But real history is never simple. Behind the shogun stood a political ecosystem more complex than any battlefield. A world of advisors, families, scholars, spies, merchants, monks, and bureaucrats all vying for influence. All fighting their battles off the battlefield. And what's most astonishing is this: many of these people held more real power than the shogun himself. The shogun was the face of authority. They were the engine. This documentary unveils the hidden mechanics of Japan's political machine. The forces your school textbooks never mentioned, the families that outlasted entire dynasties, and the power brokers who shaped history from the shadows. What you're about to learn will permanently rewrite how you see Japan. When people imagine the shogun, they picture absolute control, a ruler whose word could shape the destiny of the nation. But the truth is far more complicated. Japan's political system was designed not for one person to rule, but to ensure that no single person ever could. The shogun was powerful, yes, but always surrounded, constrained, and balanced by competing forces. Ancient aristocratic families, religious institutions, samurai clans, bureaucratic lineages, provincial lords, merchant financiers, and even information gatekeepers. Each group controlled something the shogun needed yet could not fully command. This delicate balance created a paradox: the shogun ruled Japan, but Japan did not belong to the shogun. When we imagine the shogunate, we picture a lone, powerful figure seated in a vast hall, issuing orders that ripple across the country. But the truth is more complicated. A shogun was never alone. Behind every decree, every reform, every war, there were people, many people whispering, advising, plotting, preventing, and manipulating. In this section, we explore the invisible government, the web of retainers, courtiers, informants, monks, financiers, and even entertainers who influenced the direction of Japan more than the shogun himself. Some worked in shadows, others acted in plain sight, disguised as mere bureaucrats. But together, they formed a power system far more durable than the shogun at its top. To understand the invisible government, imagine 3 concentric rings around the shogun. Ring 1, the personal circle. These were the people the shogun trusted or thought he trusted. Favorites, advisors, tutors, wet nurses, concubines, childhood retainers. They shaped his personality, worldview, and habits long before he sat on the throne. Ring 2, the administrative circle. This group handled the machinery of government. Elders, chamberlains, inspectors, city magistrates, tax officials. Many had decades of institutional memory and quietly overruled weak shoguns through procedure. Ring 3, the shadow circle, the least visible but often the most powerful. Monks who controlled information channels. Merchants who controlled money flows. Influential families who had no official position but every unofficial connection. No shogun could break free from these rings. Most importantly, these rings often continued operating even when the shogun changed. One of the most surprising power blocks in Japanese history is the wet nurse faction. This sounds almost comedic until you realize that a wet nurse raised the future shogun in his most vulnerable years, held emotional authority over him, and often came from a family hungry for influence. A wet nurse's brothers, sons, and nephews frequently became key gatekeepers. They had access to the shogun's private chambers, a privilege even high-ranking officials lacked. Many policies passed not because they were logical, but because they benefited the wet nurse's clan. In several eras, this faction effectively dictated the shogun's schedule, correspondence, and even marriages. The shogun might have controlled armies, but the wet nurse's family controlled his daily life. If the wet nurse held emotional power, the senior advisors, especially the roju, held structural power. The roju system was not designed to help the shogun rule. It was designed to prevent him from ruling impulsively. This meant the advisors had tremendous leverage. Weak shogun? They ruled for him. Strong shogun? They slowed him down with protocol, precedent, and endless paperwork. Some advisors became masters at manipulating information, delaying letters, adjusting reports, or presenting filtered intelligence. To the shogun, the world was what his advisors allowed him to see. In modern terms, they were political psychologists, bureaucratic strategists, and professional gatekeepers rolled into one. Samurai ruled Japan, at least on paper, but money, real power, flowed through merchants. The bakufu borrowed enormous sums, often secretly. Merchants financed roads, military repairs, domain bailouts, and even succession disputes. Some merchant families knew the shogunate's financial condition better than the shogunate itself. When a merchant refused credit, a domain could collapse. When he extended credit, a domain could survive a famine. Samurai might sneer at merchants publicly, but privately they begged them to keep the country running. Long before newspapers existed, temples ran Japan's information superhighway. Couriers, travelers, pilgrims, encoded letters. Monks heard everything and shared selectively. Many temples held unofficial intelligence files on domains, conflicts, marriages, and political tensions. In some cases, monks warned shoguns of conspiracies before the military did. In other cases, they created conspiracies by spreading rumors. A shogun who ignored the temples risked ruling blind. Even at the height of their authority, no shogun, not even Tokugawa Ieyasu, ruled absolutely. Why? Because the system was designed to prevent tyranny. And in preventing tyranny, it also prevented full control. Every power center had a counter-power. Advisors balanced the shogun, merchants balanced the samurai, temples balanced the government, domains balanced each other. Power in Japan was never a singular force. It was a negotiated equilibrium, a delicate web where too much dominance by any actor threatened the whole structure. The shogun was not the system. He was the stabilizer placed at its center. Religion in Japan was never just about belief. It was about influence. It was about land. And above all, it was about information. Long before samurai ruled with swords, temples ruled with networks. They chronicled history, managed land, stored wealth, controlled education, and maintained the information pipelines that connected regions long before the state could. So when the shogunate emerged, it did not destroy religious power. It negotiated, redirected, and weaponized it. In this section, we reveal how temples and shrines operated not merely as spiritual centers but as political players, sometimes partners of the shogun, sometimes enemies, and often something far more complicated. Before the espionage networks of the Edo period were formalized, temples already had a continent-wide intelligence system. Why? Because monks traveled, pilgrims traveled, and temples recorded everything. A monk could cross domains without suspicion. He could enter castles, join feasts, listen to rumors, copy documents, and carry messages disguised as scripture. More importantly, he could do all of this without being searched. Some temples maintained intelligence archives older and more complete than anything in the shogunate. They recorded domain tensions, marriages, commercial disputes, even weather patterns and crop failures. When the shogunate needed information, it often had to ask the temples first. Shrines were different from temples. If temples controlled information, shrines controlled legitimacy. A shogun did not rule simply because he won battles. He ruled because the heavens, or more specifically, the shrines, said he could. Throughout history, powerful clans fought not only on battlefields but in shrine precincts, offering donations, sponsoring festivals, and rewriting genealogies to connect themselves to divine ancestors. Some shoguns built shrines as political statements. Others received or denied shrine titles strategically to elevate allies and weaken enemies. To rule Japan, you needed shrines to acknowledge your right to rule. A shogun without shrine legitimacy was merely a warlord with good branding. Religion did not always cooperate with the shogunate. In fact, some of the most dangerous uprisings in Japanese history were fueled not by samurai, but by religious movements. The Eko-Iki revolts, for example, nearly toppled entire provinces. These were not mere peasants, they were organized, armed, and spiritually unified under charismatic religious leaders. What made them dangerous was not their weapons. It was their belief. An army fighting for land can be bought off. An army fighting for salvation cannot. The shogunate had to wage ideological warfare, not just military campaigns. Temples were burned, sects were suppressed, and religious leaders were executed not because of heresy, but because of political threat. To survive the threat of religious uprisings, the Tokugawa shogunate developed one of the most sophisticated political technologies in pre-modern history, the temple registration system. Every person in Japan had to belong to a temple. This was not about faith. It was about surveillance. Temples reported births, deaths, absences, travel, converts, visitors, and suspicious activity. They functioned almost like police stations, census offices, and security checkpoints combined. By weaponizing religion as an administrative tool, the shogunate turned temples into the backbone of social control. Yet the irony is clear: the same institutions that once threatened the state became essential to maintaining it. The shogunate feared many things: rebellions, conspiracies, foreign powers, but nothing was more dangerous than unified belief. Why? Because unified belief can create leaders stronger than law, loyalty stronger than economics, armies stronger than fear. A group united by shared suffering and a charismatic doctrine could undo decades of shogunal planning in a single generation. This is why the shogunate monitored temples so closely, controlled pilgrimage routes, and even regulated sermons. Religion was not the enemy. Uncontrolled religion was. When we imagine the shogunate, we tend to picture armored warriors, political councils, or the shogun seated in majestic authority. But behind the grand halls and official decrees was something far more essential: a vast, invisible information network that kept Japan stable for centuries. The shogun did not rule Japan through swords alone, he ruled it through knowledge. To maintain power, the shogunate needed to know everything: who was trading secretly, who was allying with whom, which domains had rising wealth, which lords had suspicious retainers. Japan was enormous, the daimyo were powerful, and the shogunate could not afford surprises. So the bakufu built a system, one so subtle, so far-reaching, and so efficient that most ordinary people never realized it existed. This was the world of spies, informants, covert inspectors, and silent watchers who moved through society, gathering whispers that could change the fate of entire clans. And at the center of it all, a simple truth: information is power. Lens is control. Knowledge is the shogun's strongest weapon. For over 260 years, the Tokugawa shogunate ruled Japan with remarkable stability, longer than many empires, kingdoms, or dynasties in world history. But this raises a question. A system run by humans, filled with ambition, rivalry, and power struggles, how did it survive for so long without collapsing into chaos? The answer is not found in military might, nor in the shogun's personal charisma. It lies in something far more intricate: a self-sustaining mechanism of balance, surveillance, and controlled tension. The bakufu designed its world like a finely tuned machine. Every domain was carefully watched. Every alliance was subtly counterbalanced. Every potential threat was quietly diffused before it grew dangerous. This wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calculated governance. The shogunate understood a principle that modern political scientists now emphasize: power is not maintained by force. It is maintained by limiting the conditions in which force becomes necessary. By distributing power among the daimyo but never enough for any of them to challenge the shogun, the system produced a strange equilibrium. A stable nation built on controlled distrust. On the surface, peace. Underneath, tension so carefully arranged that it prevented war rather than caused it. This was the genius of the Tokugawa system. A political architecture so sophisticated that stability became inevitable. And perhaps most surprisingly, most Japanese citizens never realized that the true battle of the Edo period was not fought with swords, but with policies, surveillance, and psychological pressure. The shogunate didn't just govern the land, it governed the temperature of society itself. Thank you for watching. Japan's history still hides countless secrets, and we're just getting started. If you want to uncover more mysteries of samurai, ninja, and ancient Japan, subscribe and join us on this journey through time.